All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello, all. What a day it's going to be. Thank you. I'm excited. Oh, my gosh. A lot of people will be put off by your recorded applause. Not me. Please. More, folks. Come on. We've got to start the show. Please, everybody. Come on. All right. I'm overwhelmed. It's humbling, if I can use that word, and it's terrific to see all my favorite kids here. And I'm talking about Albert
thank
and Kim.
Kim, how are you?
And all of the boys and girls in the chat, everyone. This is a great show. David Katz, the former federal prosecutor, steps through to help decode what I think is the case that could affect the way government protects you in all the ways the EPA regulates air, water, soil, consumer protections, the protections of all sort, FDA, drugs, food. They will all be affected by a case that is being argued before the Supreme Court and considered in the Supreme Court a term. David will comment on that. I have one very important thing to tell you also here. So the important thing is that even as I'm speaking to you now, I am working in Los Angeles at KFI Radio, but I want you to stay right here, all right? I'm doing this because I want to give Kim a big lift up and the David Katz conversation we've had.
Yeah.
And so I can tell you it's a good one. And that'll happen in the second hour. And Kim has got all kinds of stuff between now and then as well. Also, Belinda Waymouth with It's the Planet Stupid in the second hour. So the second hour is packed.
Yeah.
So I will, I got to head over and, make some money. It's a one day. It's just
somebody's got to pay the bills,
Yeah, but I wanted to come say hello and to kind of get things started here. So that's why I'm here now. Anything, Kim, that you'd like to relate before
you go?
Yeah.
I don't really want you to leave. I like it better when you're here, but if you
Kim, how are you?
All right.
gotta go. That's just the way it is.
What?
Yeah. Well, that does seem to be the way it is. So, Kim, while I'm away,
Yeah.
you are not permitted to give anyone the rod of equity and mercy. That is a process.
Rude.
No, I mean, I'm sorry.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
It can only be conferred on people by yours truly. It's one of the few.
If you're going to leave, if you're going to turn your back and walk out the door.
Oh, listen to
and
this. Now
I'm
I'm turning my back. Wow.
And I'm the babysitter, then I get to also make the rules.
Well, I think you're pretty great. But I don't think you get to make the rules. So, look, I don't want to have a big argument here. When mommy and daddy fight in front of the kids, it's
Kim,
never good. So, Albert,
thank you.
Please take control of the situation.
Are you going to hide the rod of equity and mercy, lock it in its little equity and mercy safe?
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't. I don't have to hide it. These are certain powers that are imbued in me that you don't have. Okay, so there's not. I don't have to worry about like you stealing it. It's not like Lord of the Rings.
Maybe
you don't have it.
A new rod.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm going to take your rod and go home. I'll come up with a new one.
Oh, that is really questionable.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it doesn't happen.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
When they take your power, it's a tough thing.
Yeah.
Smash the like button before I leave for
with
Kim.
your iron rod.
And thank you for sharing the show in all the ways you do and for supporting us in all the ways you do. I so appreciate it. If you want to help keep us alive, it's themarkthompsonshow.com. Click Patreon or PayPal, and you can join our community of contributors and supporters. We are a show that recognizes all of you at the end of every episode because you help make every episode happen. So you can see your name there at the end of the show. It's our way of saying thank you and acknowledging you at the end of every show. Okay, that's it. Lengthy preamble.
Right.
Thank you. Kim, It is all you, baby.
All right, that's it. Here we go.
I've said my prayer, and
fingers crossed.
I wish I wish you well. All right, Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show. Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
That's it. I thought he'd never leave. Hi, Albert.
Good morning, Kim.
Good morning to you. So Mark will return in a conversation with David Katz coming up later in the show. We have Belinda Waymouth with It's the Planet Stupid.
What?
That, yes, we do. That's coming up as well. Right now, though, I wanted to get to a chunk of Trump. So let's do that because there's a lot to talk about when where Trump is concerned.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
In lieu of Mark Thompson, Kim McAllister in for Mark today. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, admitted on Fox that he is taking orders from Trump when it comes to sabotaging the border deal. They don't want a successful border deal because that would look good for President Biden in an election year. And so Mike Johnson is taking calls from Trump talking about ways to make this not happen. He admitted, Mike Johnson, to Laura Ingraham on Fox News Wednesday night that he has been talking to Donald Trump pretty frequently about a possible deal being negotiated to fix the problems at the border. Apparently, Trump has been pressuring Johnson to denounce this bill, making sure that it will never reach the House floor. Johnson is saying, I don't think now is the time for comprehensive immigration reform because we know how complicated it is. And so I just think it's very interesting that in the interest of Donald Trump, the business of the American people, of making us all safer, of trying to fix immigration problems is being squashed. And he admitted it on national television. So there you go. Here's an interesting story that could have an impact on the charges against Trump. The Supreme Court apparently looking into this case regarding January 6th rioter sentencings. You can call them rioters or insurrectionists or whatever. The Supreme Court has made a decision recently to take up this case challenging how the Justice Department prosecutes the January 6th rioters. They have already put on hold the sentences of several rioters. This could affect hundreds of thousands of, well, at least hundreds more cases, including the case of Donald Trump. If this challenge is successful, the Supreme Court could potentially wipe off 2 of the 4 counts that special counsel Jack Smith has brought against the former president in his federal election interference case. This could also mean shaky ground for many of the felony convictions for dozens of January 6th rioters. So it's called Fisher versus the United States. And since the Supreme Court agreed to take it up, more than a dozen January 6th defendants have asked judges to stop their upcoming sentencings and trials. Some judges have, some have not. Others have agreed to delays for sentencing in a handful of these cases. So we'll see how it goes. It's all about challenging a conviction strategy. This all stems from this case brought by Joseph Fisher, who's a former police patrolman from Pennsylvania, convicted of obstruction for charging the police line at the Capitol. And that is the basis of how the DOJ has secured felony convictions against hundreds of January 6th rioters, successfully arguing they committed a felony by obstructing a federal proceeding. And that seems right to me. They were trying to obstruct the certification of the vote, right? Which is a federal proceeding. But the question Fisher is asking is whether the law can be applied to congressional proceedings like the certification on January 6th. So is that a federal proceeding? Does that count? And does that matter? And if it doesn't matter, then all these convictions can be tossed right out. Yeah, I know. I hear you. I hear the collective gasp as you make it. Trump was also talking about the cognitive test. You remember man, woman, whatever.
Man, woman, person, thing, that one.
Yeah, that one. That's the one. he he says now, he aced it, that he's bragging of this Montreal cognitive assessment, person, woman, man, camera, TV, back from 2020. Yesterday, he did this diatribe where he said that test is a lot harder than the media makes it out to be. He said they show you the first one, like a giraffe, a tiger, or this or that, a whale. Which one is the whale? He said correctly. Then it gets harder and harder, he said. And then it's multiply 302,093 times 4, divide by 3. No. That's the problem. That's not the kind of question for this test. So the Huffington Post puts a sample test up for the Montreal cognitive assessment. There's not really complicated math questions on there. He's repeatedly claimed this test is a measure of intelligence. It's not. It's just designed to look for signs of cognitive impairment that can lead to dementia. And so it's supposed to be easy for anyone of normal cognitive health. So they're not going to ask you to multiply large numbers and then divide them. But
they're not one of those complicated, long answered questions, Kim.
No.
I'm sure your kids get them. Like, Billy has to go to the store. How many steps does it take for him?
No.
One of those,
No. Last night, Julie's doing her homework, and I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" She goes, "Trigonometry." And I thought, whoa, she's past anything that I ever even looked at. So all that complicated stuff. No, that's not what the test is about. So he lied about that.
It was wrong. It was stupid. And I'm trying to be a better person.
So Elise Stefanik is, everyone's kind of throwing her name around as to whether she will maybe the vice presidential candidate should Trump end up on the ticket, which looks like maybe that we're headed that way. Now Trump is pulling her into the campaign. So she will be at an appearance with him in New Hampshire later this week, but she's one of several speakers scheduled to appear on stage ahead of Trump during this event in Concord, New Hampshire on Friday. Others are members of Congress as well, stumping for Trump in Iowa and New Hampshire this week. But her presence there is notable because a lot of people are saying that she is trying to put herself in place to be the vice presidential nominee. So she's going to be on stage tomorrow in New Hampshire with Trump. Trump, ahead of New Hampshire, though, is in a major poll. He's got a 16-point lead in New Hampshire just days before the primary. This poll done by Suffolk University, the Boston Globe, and NBC finds the former president at 50% support in New Hampshire, among Republicans, of course, to 34% for former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Ron DeSantis, of course, of Florida, who edged out Haley for second in Iowa, is a distant third at only 5%. So that's how it looks in New Hampshire going into the New Hampshire primaries. 50% Trump, 34% Haley, 5% DeSantis. That's not looking good. But in New Hampshire, unlike other places, undeclared voters can take part in the presidential primary. So that could have an impact on what happens here. The new poll that was taken shows Trump dominating among registered Republicans and voters who called themselves conservatives, whereas Haley was leading among moderates and independents. So we'll see if that means that the undeclared are more moderate or independent, then it could be really good for her. And lastly, on Chunk of Trump, I don't know if you saw what Mitt Romney had to say, but he called Trump supporters, some of them, out of touch with reality. And he says, like I do, he has a really hard time understanding why Trump's legal issues don't seem to be moving the needle more with voters. Here's the quote from Mitt Romney. He said, "I think a lot of people in this country are out of touch with reality and will accept anything Donald Trump tells them." You had a jury, said Romney, that said Donald Trump raped a woman, and that doesn't seem to be moving the needle. There's a lot of things about today's electorate that I have a hard time understanding. This, according to Mitt Romney. He said if Donald Trump is the nominee, the election will revolve around all of these legal issues, his trials, perhaps convictions. If he goes to trial and loses there, and about things like January 6th, that was actually from DeSantis. So, yeah. And DeSantis said, we're going to lose if that's the decision voters are making based on all the legal issues. We don't want it to be a referendum on these issues. So between DeSantis, who has skin in the game because he's running at this point, and Romney, I don't understand either. I don't get how you could have someone where a jury said, yeah, we buy that he sexually assaulted this woman, and still people are supporting him. 50% of Republicans in New Hampshire that were polled. Wild. That is Chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
for another Chunk of Trump.
Yeah, that's Chunk of Trump. I don't know. There's so much about this that it's the craziest thing. Let's talk about the FBI warning companies to be very, very careful about using drones that were made in China because of national security risks. The Chinese drones, they say, continue to pose a significant risk to the critical infrastructure and U.S. national security. Maybe you think you bought a drone that happens to be manufactured in China. Maybe it's somehow secretly sending information back somewhere else, right? And so the FBI says companies need to be very wary of using them. The FBI and the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, warning in a new memo issued just yesterday. This, of course, comes as the U.S. has been working to defend against Chinese targeting of the U.S. critical infrastructure organizations, which apparently hackers from China have been actively attempting to spy on since 2021. CNN had reported that organizations targeted by the hackers cover the maritime, transportation, communications, utility, and government sectors, among others. It's a little disconcerting why they want all the information about everything going on in America. Why would you care? Why would you need to map everything out like that?
Wasn't that also with the pair? Remember they had that, it was like a parachute or like
the spy balloon?
Spy balloon, yes.
Yeah.
They always want everything. And
Checking
even, like,
it out.
Phones, we had that Huawei phones that we completely banned because it's a Chinese-made cell phone, and they were just using it to, I don't know what they want, Kim. They want our information. I always imagine them wanting our stuff when you opt into anything.
Right.
This is gonna need your information. I'm like, okay, well, I guess.
Why would they want to map everything out here, though? I mean, they're not planning a war with us, right? They're not planning on bombing our infrastructure.
Yeah, I
So
don't know.
that's weird. I think that's weird. The executive assistant director for infrastructure security, his name is Dr. David Mussington, put out a statement saying our nation's critical infrastructure sectors like energy, chemical, and communications are increasingly relying on unmanned aerial systems for various missions that ultimately reduce operating costs and improve staff safety. But the use of Chinese manufactured UAS risks exposing sensitive information that jeopardizes the U.S. national security, economic security, public health, and safety is a real concern. So they say data collected by companies essential to the PRC's military civil fusion strategy. PRC, I'm trying to figure out what the PRC is. The data collected by this seeks to gain strategic advantage over the United States by facilitating access to advanced technologies and expertise. And the Department of Homeland Security has been warning about the risks posed by these Chinese-made drones dominating the global market for commercial drones for years. Back in 2019, Homeland Security issued an alert saying the drones may be sending sensitive flight data to their manufacturers in China, where then it could be accessed by their government. And that's a problem. So the Army banned the use of Chinese-made drones, but still we're using them in commercial capabilities and personal capabilities.
People's Republic of China. I think that's what they're referring
to. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yes. All right. Let's talk about the Supreme Court They could be about to take away power from Democratic presidents. Wednesday, the Supreme Court's conservative supermajority apparently signaled its intent to overturn 4 decades of precedent and award itself even greater authority to strike down policies that govern every conceivable aspect of life in the United States. This revolution, they say, has been years in the making, the result of a funded campaign to transform the courts into a weapon against every single regulation you can think of. That's the environment, the economy, healthcare, civil rights, education. All the aspects of federal governments could be at risk because of basically the whims of several Supreme Court justices. It's something that we'll be talking about a little bit more in depth with David Katz, at least Mark will, a little later in the show, but huge issue. Something else I wanted to ask you specifically about, Albert, and this was about a football question. Did you see the helmet manufacturer talking about the shattered helmet from Patrick Mahomes in the playoff game?
I actually did not. I did see the helmet. I didn't see what the manufacturers had to say.
So it's a giant chunk of the helmet in a head-on-head collision blew out of Mahomes' helmet. And the manufacturer of that helmet says the helmet did its job, but because of the cold temperatures, and they didn't really test their helmets in this type of, it was what, the 4th coldest NFL game ever?
It looked miserable. It looked like one of those, I'm glad I'm not there. I'm glad.
Yeah,
I'm
you could see, look at that hole right there in his helmet. I mean, wow. But yeah, it was the 4th coldest NFL game in history. The temperature at kickoff was a -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds gusting up to more than 25 miles an hour made the wind chill about minus 30
like
during the game.
right?
Yeah, -30. So
There's
and
never
they
been
say
anything like this.
extreme conditions like those are bound to test the limits of even the highest performing products. This from Surtur Sports, which makes the Vicus 02 helmet that he was wearing there. They said in this statement that the helmet did what it was supposed to do. And that even when he went to the sidelines, they had to take this helmet off because obviously it was compromised. He didn't even realize it right away until his teammates pointed out, look, there's something wrong with your helmet there. So he goes to the sidelines to put on a different helmet. And because of the cold, it's hard for him to get it on his head. It's basically the helmet inside is frozen. So, I mean,
gosh.
I don't know how you test things like this in this type of element unless it's, in real gameplay. But he says he's fine. This helmet is ranked very highly in independent evaluations, so they think it's okay. They said it's unusual for a football helmet to crack a shell, but that they've had occurrences in the lab, and they generally test at ambient temperature. If you asked a football equipment room manager, you might find a different answer. They said they see tons of helmets with impacts, but they think it did its job. They think it's okay. So the question I have for you, given the fact that this helmet cracked like this and that he could barely put the next one on, is do you think that when it's this cold, that games should be canceled because of safety for reasons like this?
Entertainment purposes, no, because this is what, like, when I imagine old football, I imagine like terrible weather. I remember just putting in my like Total Impact VHSs, like just all these compilations of just playing in the horrible mud and rain. And this is part of the game, and this is part of the regional I guess advantages. Like the Kansas City Chiefs may be more used to playing in the cold than the Miami Dolphins, so that is an advantage. So no. But I know that the helmets are kind of like a huge, like with the CTE going around, the helmets are, I know there's independent groups that are making new helmets. Before the NFL had a contract with just Riddell, I think, or Riddle for the helmets, but they had tons of lawsuits with the CTE. So it's like a nuclear arms race to have a specific type of helmet be more popular and to make a lot of money in the NFL. So
yeah,
it's weird, but I do believe the weather is I mean, they kind of did delay a weather game. The Bills were supposed to play in this unplayable snow, and they pushed it back a day. So I think there's limits to it, but like if there's no snow and it's just cold like that, you got to play.
Randy says, how cold would it have to be to postpone a football game?
I don't know. These are our modern day gladiators. So we'll still watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we ever think of concern, which is it's terrible, but I think it's just in our nature. Yeah, the weather is
weather's part of football. This is the way it is. Walter says, "Oh, those scratches will buff right out." Yeah, I don't think so. I don't blame
Mahomes for not even wanting to try to take off the helmet. And I'm sure all the other players like this. We got to get this game over with. Like we're just gonna play this all the way through. We don't need to take our time here.
Yeah, I think they need to do something differently though. If it's that cold, you can't put your extra helmet, set it aside on a bench and think that you're going to be able to slide that right on. Because then he's putting on this helmet that's frozen inside, and that takes a while to warm up. And how, does that affect your playing because your head is basically freezing? I don't know. I mean,
the Dolphins, it didn't help them, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they should. I disagree. I think if it gets that cold that it affects the equipment like that, then that should be canceled. Look at that helmet.
In football, it would have to take something really drastic for any changes.
Yeah.
So like the Damar Hamlin thing with the canceling the games, the COVID was a huge thing. Unless it's really big, unfortunately, football will never change because there are arguments that people will still watch, people will still play. And there's bills to be paid. There's a lot of people investing in commercials that have to be played. So
yeah, this is true. It's all about the money. All about the money. Mindy says it's a safety hazard, but you got to be a little nuts to play football for a living. Yeah. Gil says they actually have a blower for helmets blowing warm air on the bench.
Yeah, for helmets, and I think the benches are heated. But at that point, like you're going snap to snap, you're going straight back to the warming bench.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's do a little bit of news before we move on to law and disorder.
Okay, let me get
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The clock is ticking on Congress to avoid a government shutdown. The House and the Senate each need to pass a funding extension before tomorrow's deadline. The Senate will vote on a continuing resolution this afternoon. Then the House would need to vote on the measure as well. They're trying to do it before a big old snowstorm moves in. A Justice Department report says the 2022 Uvalde, Texas school shooting should have been stopped sooner and could have. The DOJ releasing a nearly 600-page report today detailing the response to the shooting that killed 21 and injured 17. In the report, the DOJ said the response to the May 24th of 2022 mass casualty incident at Robb Elementary School was a failure. More than 100 million Americans bracing for snow. The forecasters say 2 back-to-back storms will spread at least 3 inches of snow across about 18 states from Wyoming to New York today and tomorrow. The travelers should be ready for the delays at airports and on the highways too. A House panel is expected to vote on an impeachment resolution of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas on January 31st. Now, the House Homeland Security Committee is holding its final Mayorkas impeachment hearing today. CNN says that with the committee vote planned for later this month, floor action on the possible impeachment could happen as early as February. So, a Northern California election office discovered a package containing fentanyl. This happened at the Yuba County Registrar of Voters headquarters. That's where they discovered this package containing a white powdery substance. It was later identified in a field test as this lethal drug. California Secretary of State Election Security notified about the package on Tuesday. According to the Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, the substance will be analyzed again to rule out any possible false positives. Nobody was hurt in this incident, but the investigation into this package, who sent it, why this type of thing is ongoing. So very disconcerting. California Governor Gavin Newsom is vowing to veto Sacramento Democrat Kevin McCarthy's bill aiming to ban tackle football for kids 12 and under. McCarthy said he believes the ban would save lives and that youth football can be replaced by a safer option in flag football. But in a statement, Governor Gavin Newsom said, while he's concerned about the health and the safety of young athletes, an outright ban, he said, is not the answer. Governor Newsom says his administration will work with the legislature and the assembly member McCarty to make tackle football safer for all, while still allowing parents, he said, the freedom to decide which sports are most appropriate for their kids.
Wow, that seems I felt like he would have went the other way. But,
exactly. And so I was talking to someone, I forget who I was talking to yesterday, that said that is another sign that Newsom is looking at a federal run for president or some type of other office, like federal office, because
putting things more down the middle,
trying to appeal to more people, right? So what we might think in California, where of course you would ban tackle football for 12-year-olds and 6-year-olds and whatever, maybe he's looking to be a little bit more, mainstream, you would think. I don't know. Speaking of sports, NBA player Josh Giddey will not face criminal charges after police in Newport Beach investigated him for an alleged inappropriate relationship with an underage girl. Officials announcing Wednesday they were not able to corroborate any criminal activity involving the Oklahoma City Thunder Guard. In November, a since-deleted social media post claimed a person Giddey was seen in photos with was in junior high school. TMZ reported that the person and her family refused to cooperate with police, and so no charges filed there.
Unfortunately, the internet just ran with it when it came out. So they're just making all these terrible memes about like any picture with him with kids around. They're like making fun of him. But I'm glad he came out the other end. That must have been terrible. But
well, that's really hard to get away from now, because once that's associated with your name, even though you haven't been charged, right? There's no evidence other than that once deleted post to indicate that. But now that it's a thing, how do you
yeah, nobody, I'm sure half of the internet doesn't even know that it's deleted. They just think he's a creep. So that's tough. He can't use social media right now.
In business news, the federal U.S. Court of Appeals is barring imports on Apple Watch Series 9 and Ultra 2 models. Again, this amid a challenge from Apple that it violated patent infringement laws. Apple's proposed a redesign that would allow the watches to be imported to the United States again. Per the iPhone maker, the revamped Series 9 and Ultra 2 models would exclude the blood oxygen monitoring feature that is at the center of this patent infringement dispute. Google CEO Sundar Pichai says more job cuts are coming. Google staffers received a memo yesterday summarizing the company's artificial intelligence priorities and ambitious goals. The 2024 Google Objectives and Key Results publication is due out later this week that will further explain the AI shift. In yesterday's memo, Pichai noted that tough choices will need to be made to create the capacity for this type of investment. So that's why they're laying people off. Former Meta Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg leaving the company's board of directors. She posted on Facebook on Wednesday that she will not be seeking re-election to the post in May. Sandberg joined Facebook, now called Meta, back in 2008 after 7 years at Google. And again, now she's checking out of it. Going to be a big weekend for Bay Area bars. Apparently, they're all preparing for an influx of Niners fans looking to watch this weekend's divisional matchup against the Packers. Most will cater to the San Francisco faithful. There are a few Green Bay bars expecting their fair share of what do they call them? Cheeseheads? Yeah, cheeseheads. The kickoff is Saturday at 5:15 local time. So
that's an old classic matchup, Kim. Those are two great. I like to call them uniform games. When you see them on TV, it just pops and it looks good. You got the green and the yellow, and then of course you got the red and gold with the Niners.
Do you go to a bar to watch, or do you like to watch from the comfort of home?
Usually home, because there's a lot of bad takes at bars. Like I can't stand people who have bad sports takes, or their assessments during the game are kind of not too accurate, and it bothers me. So I like.
So what you're saying is the stupid people annoy you. Is what you're saying.
That's the that is the Cliff Notes version of what I was saying. But yes.
So we'll end it with Triceratops coming to CU Boulder. They're getting a full Triceratops skeleton reconstruction at the University of Colorado's Boulder campus that'll be on display in the Sustainable Energy and Environment Community Building on East Campus. It's a cast of various bones found in the 19th century that were later assembled into a complete skeleton. The Triceratops, of course, was a plant-eating dinosaur that lived in areas including what is now Colorado 70 million years ago. Imagine being a student there and having to, constantly getting to walk by that Triceratops.
That's really cool.
I think it's cool too. This one's a little wacky. We'll end with this one. This is science-y too. A state lawmaker is making an effort to turn Pluto into Arizona's official state planet. Did you need a state planet? I don't know. Republican Representative Justin Wilmoth has been advocating for this proposed bill on social media, citing his reasons why he thinks it's a worthy idea. While no longer being a planet, Pluto was discovered at the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff in 1930, and it was a planet for nearly 8 decades. Wilmoth argues such a move would help recognize the rich history of astronomy in Arizona and get people talking about the topic. Pluto has not been considered an official planet since 2006. I feel like every time I say planet, I say it like the open of It's the Planet, Stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Planet. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm trying to look for California's actual planet, but I think what they're trying to say is that Pluto is just a huge star. I think that was what it was a while ago. It's just a huge rock. So I don't think we. I don't think we have an Phantom planets on California that they used for, I think, the intro for one of those old MTV shows. I think like Laguna Beach, I think, or The Hills. One of those shows had it was just trashy reality TV that used this song, but
we don't have an official state planet in California. We have an official state mushroom and an official state bat. I don't think we have an official state planet. No,
that's unfortunate.
It is. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. You know the coffee is good. This is the good stuff. And let me tell you, the tea is amazing. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Check out the website. If you do end up ordering something, please be our guest at 10% off. You enter Mark T as our code at checkout for your 10% discount at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It's a perfect thing to have on a morning like this. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And our thanks to them for supporting the news. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod. Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Everything is going extremely well.
Call me a liar. Is that what you call me?
You, sir, are a liar.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Liar, your pants are on fire!
A Google told me.
Can you let him finish, sir? It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
No.
I'm going to tell you what I think.
What are the porn stars doing here?
Do you have a secret talent?
Isn't anybody but a weed?
100% effective. How about that?
Say what?
And this is their new host.
There is no defense for my conduct.
I misspoke. I stand corrected.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Time
Time's up, mother effers.
In just about 20 minutes, we'll have a conversation with Mark Thompson and former federal prosecutor David Katz. Great conversation. So we'll do that. Of course, in the second hour, we also get It's the Planet Stupid. We'll talk to Belinda Waymouth about the environment. But right now, let's do a little bit of law and disorder. How about that, Albert?
I love that.
Okay.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
All right, let's start with a story that just popped up. This is a breaking story. There is a judge in Georgia requiring Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis to address an ethics scandal amid her ongoing prosecution of Donald Trump. So the judge is saying Willis has to address this. This whole thing was first reported Thursday that Georgia Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee filed a document requiring Willis to submit a written response to allegations that she engaged in a personal romantic relationship with Nathan Wade. He is a special prosecutor in the Fulton County DA's office. So the Fulton judge, Scott McAfee, is scheduling an evidentiary hearing in mid-February to examine recent relationship allegations about Willis. He is giving her until February 2nd to respond. This is very interesting because the allegations of this personal relationship coming during the election subversion case, I don't know if that affects the case at all or what could happen, but they want her to explain and want her to respond to allegations to find out, is this really something that's happening and is it affecting the prosecution at all? All right, let's move on into the Rust movie. Remember the Alec Baldwin incident on the set of the movie Rust? Well, the armorer in this case was offered leniency if she could explain the source of this live bullet. The prosecutor, offered a favorable outcome last fall to the armorer. Her name is Hannah Gutierrez Reed. If she would help explain how live rounds made it onto the film set. The offer, though, came with a warning that if she refused to do this, that she could be hit with additional charges. Well, she is set to go on trial next month in Santa Fe, New Mexico, for the death of Helena Hutchins, who was the cinematographer shot by Alec Baldwin with this gun that wasn't supposed to have any bullets but did. She faces up to 3 years in prison if convicted on charges of involuntary manslaughter and tampering with evidence. Hutchins, as we know, was killed in 2021 while preparing to film a scene with Alec Baldwin, who was holding a gun that fired a live bullet. Gutierrez Reed had loaded that gun, which was supposed to contain only dummy rounds, but didn't. And several other live rounds were also recovered. During the investigation, a detective asked Gutierrez Reed why there would even be live ammo on set. And at the time, she said, "I have no idea." They still have not determined where these live rounds came from. And the prosecutor says he thinks she knows more about this than she has let on. He said, "I feel very strongly she has some notion of how the live rounds came on the set." They say, "We respect her right not to come forward with the information and stay silent, but if she were to come forward and answer some of these questions that plague the victims in this case, it would go a long way toward getting her a favorable resolution." So that is the latest in that case. You hear there's a pair of British brothers that have been jailed over a Swiss museum heist. Two British brothers. Yeah, they were jailed for stealing Ming Dynasty artifacts worth about £3 million from a Swiss museum. Lewis and Stuart Ahern from Greenwich in South London confessed to stealing these two vases and a cup from the Bauer Foundation Museum of Far Eastern Arts in Geneva. This was back in 2019. But on Tuesday, the brothers finally were each sentenced to 3 years and 6 months in prison at a court in Geneva. So steal that and you only get that long in prison? That
that
doesn't seem
doesn't
right.
seem that bad.
I mean, might as well go ahead and steal it if that's all you're facing.
I'll keep that in the very back of my mind.
As a backup plan, just in case.
Not in the front, but in the way back.
No. Swiss authorities say these men were wearing masks and gloves when they broke into the museum by smashing a pane on the front door before shattering a display
with
case.
Your iron rod.
Wait, we're not supposed to use the iron rod while Mark's gone. I don't know. That's the rod of equity.
Rod of equity, yeah.
My bad for getting my rods confused. It happens to a girl. They shattered the display case and left with these items believed to be from the 15th century, valued at £2,870,000. They authorities say they meticulously planned this burglary, carrying out careful reconnaissance to ensure they'd make a clean getaway and bring these items back to the UK. They naively believed, having fled the country, they had escaped punishment. But no, they did not bank on the fact we would work so closely with our Swiss counterparts to identify those involved. Busted.
I mean, there's a couple. I'm just gonna start dinging. There's like 3 ding words in there, or something like that. So,
just throw all the dings in. Yes. Let's talk about this international murder case. This is really gross. So prepare for gore ahead, okay? But this woman named Heather Mack is convicted in Bali of killing her mom and stuffing the body in a suitcase, and now she's been sentenced in Chicago too. Clearly an American woman, she pleaded guilty to helping kill her own mother and stuffed the body in a suitcase while they were on a luxury vacation in Bali. She has been sentenced to more than 2 decades in prison. So federal prosecutors had recommended a 28-year prison sentence for Mack, which is more time behind bars than the 15 years her defense lawyers requested when she was sentenced to conspiring to kill her mom. Her mom's name was Sheila in 2014. The government also wants the 28-year-old Mack to get 5 years of supervised release, pay a $250,000 fine, and restitution of $262,000. They call this a heinous crime. That she has, her uncle took the stand and says she has never shown any remorse, and if it were up to him, she would spend the rest of her life behind bars.
I'm surprised that it's so like I'm not keeping this one in the back of my mind. I want to just come out and say that, but that doesn't seem severe enough.
Apparently she wanted her trust fund. That was the whole point. The
whole suitcase thing, the Khashoggi like suitcase thing is very dark. Like that is, especially that's your own mother. Like that's
no. So this is how it worked out. She pleaded guilty last June to 1 count of conspiring to kill her mom with her then boyfriend to gain access to a $1.5 million trust fund. Prosecutors have said Mack, who was then 18 and pregnant, covered her mother's mouth while the boyfriend beat the mother on the head with a fruit bowl in the hotel room. And they said they planned this killing for months. If you planned it, grabbing the fruit bowl, I mean, I would think there would be a better plan, but okay.
Don't we all kind of like watch the news and see like, oh yeah, the couple dug a shallow grave to hide the body? I'm like, you just got to dig a little deeper. You got to go, if you're going to do something, you got to do it at least not like this, but it shows the type of people who do this type of stuff. This
is a poor plan. There's video evidence showing Mack and the boyfriend trying to get the small suitcase containing the mother's body into an Indonesian taxi cab. So they haul it out of the hotel through the lobby and into the taxi cab. I'm telling you. She has a daughter. The daughter's now 6 years old. She did pay for this sentence in Indonesia, and now she's paying for it here as well. So, and the boyfriend was convicted of murder, and he is serving an 18-year sentence in Indonesia. He is also charged in the same U.S. indictment as she is here in America. So, what a creepy case that is. International murder. Did you hear about I'm calling this guy the iPad Sprinter. He's this man wanted for stealing more than $40,000 worth of merchandise from Target stores because he takes iPads. So he goes for the big stuff, right? He he's responsible for stealing merchandise, at least nearly $40,000 so far, according to Irvine police. They have surveillance, look at this, of him entering the store calmly, strolling around, and then he spots a Target employee holding what appears to be an iPad box, approaches the worker, pretends to ask a question about the item, and then grabs it and sprints out of the store. I'm calling him
wild idea, but it just might work.
It's worked for him multiple times. The worker tries to run after this guy, but the suspect gets away. Along with other thefts, police confirm this suspect has recently been known to grab iPads before sprinting out of Target stores. I'm calling him the iPad sprinter. He makes a run for it. Security footage of this guy released by authorities in hopes someone might actually recognize him and then check in with Irvine police for a little bit more information. I mean, he's right there on video.
The police are just going like, "Oh yeah, great job. We can't do anything to you." So I mean,
God.
it's so brazen to just do it with no mask,
no hat, nothing.
No hat. Like this is just a normal day.
Just running in, just, gonna steal some iPads today. Yeah. If you know that guy, call the Irvine Police Department. Hopefully they'll be able to do more than nothing. Here's another one. This man in Woodland Hills had worked on this classic car for a really long time, and he is now desperately searching for it after it got ripped off and in the night. It is a seafoam green 1962 Impala convertible lowrider with hydraulics worth $100,000. It was stolen on January 11th from in front of this man's home. His name is Seth Wayne. He said, "I only had it for like a week and a half, but I've been wanting this specific car for a really long time. I bought it on Christmas Eve and they stole it on my birthday." Surveillance footage along Ventura Boulevard captured two suspects trying to figure out how even to get this car started. At one point, sparks can be seen flying from the car. He says the guys know nothing about this car. They had to break the grill to get into it. They couldn't open the hood, couldn't figure that out, no knowledge of the hydraulics. That's where the sparks are coming from. They ended up using a Prius to push the old classic car in order to get it a running start, only to be involved in a hit and run crash. So Wayne is a car fanatic and a collector. He says it's going to be really hard to replace this very unique convertible. He had been looking high and low for this car. So far, no sign, but he's hoping that surveillance video will lead a member of the public to be able to help track down his car that he has waited for so long. That's $100,000 car because of all the hydraulics on it, I guess. You believe that?
And it's just finding parts nowadays for older cars too. It must be really difficult to do. So it's just tracking all that stuff down. That's terrible.
I hate to blame the victim, but also if you have a $100,000 car that is your pride and joy, don't park it outside.
Oh my gosh, look at them trying to do a rolling start.
Yeah. Yeah, they had to push it with a Prius. LAPD is now investigating. They say the car might have been spotted in Canoga Park. They're still trying to figure it all out. If anyone sees the car, call the police. The drill. There is a grift going on when it comes to Airbnb, and this California man has been arrested and accused of a nationwide bait and switch Airbnb grift. Oh, it's a double booking bait and switch scheme. This man earning millions of dollars, allegedly, from more than 10,000 Airbnb and VRBO vacationers, all while lying to some of the guests and the rental companies too. His name is Shrey Goel. His personal website calls him a visionary in real estate. He's now facing 13 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of identity theft, according to the indictment filed in the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. Goel was arrested in Florida after Christmas, released on bond. No court date set. These proceedings will be held in Los Angeles, but the indictment has prosecutors saying that in 2018 and 2019, Goel would double book homes and then cancel guests' reservations at the last minute for bogus reasons, sometimes moving them to inferior lodgings. After the bait and switch, prosecutors allege Goel would then lie to either the customers, the rental companies, or both in order to avoid paying any refunds. He created what they say is a secret secret bidding war for properties by leaving them open for repeated bookings and then canceling for everyone but the highest paying guests. The man and others working with him booked more than 10,000 reservations through Airbnb, receiving more than $7 million in payouts for those reservations. They then allegedly booked additional, sometimes conflicting reservations through VRBO and received more than $1.5 million and additional payouts from those reservations. So, they apparently tricked renters with properties in Malibu, Los Angeles, Chicago, Denver, Nashville, Tennessee, Austin, Texas, all over the place. They say some of the addresses Gold listed for rent were completely fake, an allegation that lines up with the investigative feature into Gold and his real estate company that was put on Vice. So
these are the type of people where I feel like it sounds exhausting what he's doing, but it's working, and it's not good what he's doing, but we just need to refocus him into something positive, and he could contribute a lot, put him into intelligence. or something. There has to be something for this guy. It's obviously very creative and trying to find all these loopholes. He did get caught up, so he might not be the smartest. But like I said, we just gotta lead him in the right direction, because this is.
Well, imagine being a person who paid a price to stay at a certain place. You get there and they're like, "Sorry, it's booked. You have to go stay in this hovel next door."
Yeah.
No. Okay. Carjackers rob a food delivery guy at gunpoint. This one happened in Los Angeles. This food delivery driver carjacked earlier this week in the Mid-Wilshire neighborhood of Los Angeles. Happened January 15th, right before 10 p.m. at the corner of 10th Street and Plymouth Avenue. You know where that is. This man had picked up food for delivery, and the victim told police he noticed he was being followed by a vehicle described as a black newer model SUV that ultimately cut him off and blocked his path. Two suspects exited the vehicle and at gunpoint ordered the victim to exit and patted him down. He took his wallet, took the car keys, and then there were two other suspects that stayed inside the black SUV. So the victim took, and this is, of all the vehicles you want to steal, the victim's white 2013 Hyundai Sonata. So it's kind of like an older Hyundai. It's still not been recovered. And this was the man's livelihood, right? He's delivering food with this car. So bad guys, I'm telling you.
Bad guys. And I think Hyundais and Kias are both very targeted cars because I think people know how to steal them. But this is a little different. He just did it the old-fashioned hand it over type of thing.
Hand it over. Hand your keys, hand your wallet, give me it all.
Yeah.
In Italy, people that get mad when a dog poops in their yard and then no one picks it up, you'll love this. Irresponsible dog owners could be facing very hefty fines. In one Italian province, Bolzano, dog owners are now being ordered to submit their dog's DNA so authorities can match them up with any feces left on city streets. So if you don't pick up your dog poop, they can DNA test the poop and they know exactly who belongs to which poop and which dog. Busted. Just like
That's not fake. That's real.
As required by law, owners are required to pay for the DNA tests, which cost about $70, so that the evidence can be collected as part of a large dog doo-doo database. Fines for failure to pick up after your dog range from $315 to $1,100. Additional fines exist for owners who neglect to get their dogs registered too. So they are cracking down on all of this. In this area, there's about 45,000 dogs. Pardon me. The dog owners had a New Year's Day deadline. The fines were supposed to start being levied in March. So far, only 5,000 samples have been compiled, and they need to have a lot more compliance with this. So you've got to
look how beautiful this place is. Just pick up your dog poop, everyone.
Exactly.
This isn't
how hard is it?
This isn't the Tenderloin. You can't just leave your crap there.
Literally, you cannot. No.
Yeah. No.
They've voiced concerns here about stray dogs and tourists making a mess of the streets with no repercussions. So now you've got to pay to get your dog registered. You got to pay to have it DNA tested, right? And if you leave the poop lying around, you've got to pay these big hefty fines as well. Maybe that's how you crack down on this type of stuff. Hit
I
people
don't
where it
know.
hurts in
Maybe
the pocketbook.
maybe rent will go down because it's just so undesirable to live there. If you're a dog owner, you're like, oh well, I need to go register all these stuff for my dogs.
Well, let's do this last story. This is kind of ending it on a good note. In Sacramento, there is a Marine Corps veteran who was robbed at gunpoint. They came into this man's house, and for whatever reason, he had his life savings not in a bank, but in a safe in his house, about $32,000. This happened in Elk Grove, kind of in the Sacramento area. And so the home surveillance video shows two masked gunmen breaking into this man's home. His name is Marlon Harris. And they break into his home and they steal a safe containing his entire life savings. And so it was on the news in Sacramento. And this woman saw and she felt awful. She said, I had to do something. It touched my heart. I felt compelled to help this home invasion victim. She said, I couldn't do just only have hope. I had to actually take action. So she starts a GoFundMe page for him. Now he lost about $35,000.
Yeah.
So far, I'm looking at the GoFundMe. It's raised $30,000. How awesome is that? Here he is, this man that has served the country, apparently lost almost everything, and now he looks like he's going to get it back.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah. He said, I'm feeling better. There's some hope now.
Terrible people, though. Those people breaking into the house.
He's calling her a blessing and a miracle worker. He said the whole home invasion was really traumatic because they put the gun to the back of his head and they put him down on the floor. And he thought, this is it. Like, this is where I go. It's the end of it. Right. He said, yeah, it was very, very traumatic. She was inspired by this because her dad was a Korean War veteran. So she kind of felt, I think, a kinship with him. And that is why, there he is. And that is why she stepped forward to help. So out of the $35,000 that the thieves, $36,000 that the thieves took, there's now nearly $30,000 coming back to him. I don't know if you have to pay taxes on a GoFundMe, but hopefully, by the end of the GoFundMe campaign, he gets his money back and starts trusting banks because somebody knew that there was something very worthwhile in that house. Right?
I think also GoFundMe, when you're sending the money, already takes a chunk from it when you're donating. So I think that's what happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go straight from law and disorder right into our interview with David Katz. What do you think?
Well, let's button this out first.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on the Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Yeah, Thursday is the day. It's David Katz Day here on the Mark Thompson Show. It is a great interview, one that is definitely worth your time. So take a listen to this. Former federal prosecutor David Katz sitting down with Mark Thompson to talk about all things legal right here on the show.
Thompson Show.
I love Thursdays. Thursdays are the day that this guy joins us, and this guy is the great David Katz. How about it for him, everyone? Cameron, you're going to bring him in, or am I going to, what's happening on this show? I've got the guy. Katz, I introduce him, and it takes a minute for him to come on. I don't like it.
Great to be with you. Why are you yelling?
I am sorry, David. I am brimming with anticipation. We are going to be discussing something that I feel I was touching on yesterday is one of the preeminent agenda items of this Supreme Court, and that is undermining government regulation. Government regulation when it comes to the environment, when it comes to food safety, when it comes to consumer rights. This court, I think, is super corporate polluter friendly. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the case that they are hearing this week. This involves, it's being called the fisherman case because it does involve fishing and overfishing and government monitors. Maybe you can give us a sense of what it is and how the justices seem to be leaning.
Well, they say that although it's called the fisherman's case, it was a half an hour into a 3-hour argument before the word fish was ever spoken. Because what it really has to do with is Chevron deference. It has to do with how much deference the courts are going to give to expert agencies. Now, you have to bear in mind, Mark, for things like environmental regulation, the agencies are full of scientists. They're really experts. They have a lot of experience with this terrain. If you allow the courts to just decide it at first blush, you're going to have all these different judges. And so this is a huge agenda item for the right wing, especially for these people like the Koch brothers, who want to have less regulation by the EPA. Stock market operators want to have less regulation by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And all of these regulatory agencies, what they do and how much deference to give to their expert judgments was what was on the block today. The irony is that the particular case has to do with fishermen, and I think the reason that the Koch brothers, the people who don't want regulation, particularly of the environment and of energy and of things like that, I think the reason that they picked this case as a test case is because it's kind of sympathetic. What actually happened in this case was that Congress said they needed to take steps, and they passed a law to ban overfishing, and they regulated it in various ways. The thing that Congress was silent about was if you were going to have monitors on fishing boats as a way to make sure they didn't overfish, who was going to pay for it? Congress didn't mention that. So the expert agency in charge of fisheries said you have to take on your fishing boat a regulator, and you have to pay that regulator $700 a day. So just at first blush, if you're just looking at it, you could say, oh my goodness, they made the people who were regulated take the regulator with them and pay $700. Now, the Biden administration saw this challenge coming because these are appeals, Mark, from 2 different federal circuit courts. So they were brimming. They were coming to the surface in the courts, in the federal courts. The Biden administration saw which way it was going, saw that this was being regulators throughout. And so they actually they got rid of this rule, or they got rid of it to the extent that they actually paid the $700. So they paid the people who had to pay the $700, the fishing boat operators, they paid them back their $700. And they're going to argue, I think, that it's really moot under those circumstances. It's not a case, it's a case where certiorari was granted, but what they say improvidently, or it's become moot because of the facts on the ground. And Chief Justice Roberts actually asked, how important is this Chevron deference? But it's really disingenuous because, Mark, it happens in situation after situation in the lower court decisions after lower court decisions that Congress just hasn't spoken expressly to the issue. Think about AI. Think about if Congress passes a huge bill to regulate AI. Is Congress going to think about everything that's going to happen in a week or a year from now or a decade from now? No, they aren't. They're going to have an expert regulatory agency that knows all about AI, and they're going to make these calls where it's ambiguous, where it's not exactly clear what Congress intended. How do you decide in a particular case whether to apply the rule of the agency or not? Do you defer to the expertise of the agency, or do you allow the case to be shopped around like they've shopped around this abortion pill case, like they've shopped around a lot of these other cases? Can you shop that case to any district court judge in the country, and can you question the agency's use of their discretion? And obviously, the huge polluters, the people who hate regulation, who bristle at regulation, even though they make billions of dollars in our economy, they're the ones who want to have this change so that they can run the case to some district judge and they can say, well, the courts are the ones who ought to interpret it. But the reality is these expert agencies are often the ones best equipped. As Justice Kagan asked today, sometimes judges need to know what they don't know. And some district judge sitting in Amarillo, loose cannon, as we lovingly call her, down there near Mar-a-Lago, to bring this case of environmental disasters before her, to bring cases that are incredibly important in terms of their impact on the environment, on how we live our lives, on the state of the planet, all that kind of stuff, the stock markets, to just shop that case around to some district judge. Now, people will say, well, you can take it from the district judge to the appellate court, and you can ultimately take it to the U.S. Supreme Court. But our system has worked very well. We do have, I don't want to be Pollyanna, but we have effective environmental regulation. And people who don't think it's effective, it would be a whole lot less effective if we ever get rid of Chevron deference.
So well said. And I would say, David, even if you say, well, to those people who say, well, it's going to go up to the appellate court and even the Supreme Court, none of those justices in any of those courts have the expertise that you will find when it comes to science and chemistry that you'll find at the EPA when it comes to evaluating toxins and toxic dumping and the number of pollutants and parts per billion that can exist in air, soil, and water. I mean, I see this as a massively effective way to undermine government and regulation. And, we're talking about the FDA, the USDA, as you say, our food. I mean, it's not just corporate polluters. It's all the different protections that we find ourselves, I think, in a way, these are protections that are set up in these government agencies that have taken time to build. I'm sure we're overregulated in some ways, but this idea somehow that every regulation is a regulation, it's a protection. And I'm very concerned with them all going away. How do you... Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You mentioned the FDA, the the Food and Drug Administration. Think about this one, and I think that this was one of the questions from the three moderate to liberal justices today. They said, okay, how do you decide whether something is a drug or a dietary supplement? You need a lot of chemistry. You need a lot of analysis. You need an agency like the Food and Drug Administration that has had these kinds of questions come before it hundreds, indeed thousands of times. To go bring this case before a district judge, and they would try their hardest. I'm not impugning any of our district judges, but they would try their hardest. They would have experts. But the reality is that issue ought to be presented to the agencies. And if the agency gets it wrong, you could take it to the appeals court. If you have fact finding in the FDA, if the EPA holds a hearing, remember we had this in an earlier case, how much of a hearing does the SEC have to give you, right? Does the SEC have to go through the courts, or can the SEC give you a hearing? And these agencies have independent arbitrators. Now, some people will poo-poo that if you want to think that there's a deep state and they're all in it together. But no, there's a part of the IRS that enforces, and there's a part of the IRS, which is the tax court, okay, or the Department of Justice, which is the tax court. You could say none of them are the courts. None of them are the Article III federal courts, okay? But there is a judicial system. There's an administrative judicial system within these agencies, within the SEC, within the FDA. So you can have a hearing, you can bring on your experts, and there's an agency that has the expertise. And if you don't like the ruling, you can go up to the federal appellate courts, including if the U.S. Supreme Court takes it, you can take it to the U.S. Supreme Court. But at the end of the day, these agencies have expertise. The system works. By the way, I don't think that they are going to get rid of Chevron deference. It seemed from the long argument today that there are 5 votes that are going to keep Chevron deference to some extent, and maybe
so let's just be pure about what that means. That means that the existing regulatory agencies would survive then that judgment.
They would survive, and still in the case where the statute is ambiguous, those are the people who say Congress should deal with it. Congress dealt with it as best Congress dealt with it. They passed the statute that they passed. And in many, many instances, like what's a drug, what's a dietary supplement, what's an effective environmental protection of wetlands, what's going too far. All those kinds of ambiguous questions, like the fisherman one itself, will be decided by the agency. You take that one, for instance, when Congress says we're going to protect against overfishing and we're going to have inspection of it. And if they just spelled out, that means the operators have to pay for the regulator who goes on their fishing boat. That would be the end of it. If they said it shall not be imposed that the fishing boat operators have to pay for it, that would be the law. They didn't say either way. And so some agency figures out, you know what, the best way to enforce this thing is to have one. They could have had 3. Maybe that would have been unreasonable. But to have one, and to have that one paid the $700 by the guy who's got the commercial fishing boat, who's going out to fish thousands and thousands of dollars worth of fish, that person should pay $700. They said that was within the agency expertise to enforce that law because Congress had been ambiguous. And Amy Coney Barrett asked a very good question today, which makes me think that she may be the 5th vote to keep Chevron deference, to keep what I think is the sensible rule of deferring to the agencies in these questions where Congress has been ambiguous or not clear in the statute, to defer to the agency expertise, as long as it's reasonable. And the way that you do that, where the statute's unclear, defer to the agency deference if it's reasonable. She said, if we go the other way, if we get rid of Chevron deference, and the lawyer for the People Against Regulation said, End it. Don't mend it. End it. Don't mend it. But I think the worst that's going to happen is they're going to mend it, because Amy Coney Barrett said, if you get rid of this, there'll be a flood of litigation. Every single regulated person with money will go back and say, wait a second, you deferred to the agency. You shouldn't have. You, district court judge, should decide this, ab initio from the beginning. I want to show all of my evidence that the $700 was unfairly imposed. I want to show that it was, it was this, it was that, it was the other thing, the environmental regulations. They will attack that with all of their money, with all of their great lawyers. They will go back and attack every one of those agency determinations. And Amy Coney Barrett, who is a fifth vote, I think, to save Chevron deference, she got it. But you're absolutely right that this is a harbinger of getting rid of regulatory regulations, whatever you want to call them. People can say we're over-regulated. We're also protected. Thank goodness
exactly.
that we're protected in so many of these ways. We don't have terrible drugs on the market. We don't have an environment in even worse shape than it would be without Chevron deference. As you say, this is a key issue, but it's hard for people kind of to get it because it seems like inside baseball, administrative law. You thought administrative law was boring. Not if this case goes the wrong way.
Yeah, this is another point you're making, which is that this is a critical case. It's really a way that the U.S. government could change. That is to say, we could be governed increasingly by the courts. Already, I feel that's happening. But the idea somehow that these regulatory agencies that have these protections in place, these are protections for our air, our soil, our water that are already tepid, in my view. They're not strong enough. They could completely go away, or it could surrender to the courts. You'd have essentially all of these regulatory powers being surrendered to the courts. It's a huge issue, but the point you make at the end here that I really like is that it's not getting a lot of attention. It's just not easy to understand as a horse race between, Donald Trump and Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, and here's how they're polling. And I mean, that's easy to understand. And the winter weather and Gaza, and these are all important things. But there's something going on right now, and it's not involving sleight of hand. It's right out there at the Supreme Court level, but it's getting underreported in media.
This will be decided by June, like everything else. The Solicitor General argued on behalf of the United States that this would truly be a shock to so many of our systems and how we live our lives. And Kavanaugh said, I guess to be clever, he said, well, it's a shock the way it is right now, where every 4 years it seems like the personnel at these top of these agencies change. But to me, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the politics that ebbs and flows. And yes, you can have someone who's the head of the EPA under Trump is not going to be the same person that Biden would pick to head the EPA. If Nikki Haley wins, she'll pick a head of the FDA who won't be the same head of the FDA right now. These agency heads who've lasted a long time, like Fauci, it's wonderful. But normally the very top person, all of these agencies changes, and the policies can change. But it's not nearly as radical, that change, that shock to the system, as if you can shop a case around to a particular district court judge. And you know what's going to happen? The people who don't like regulation, they're going to bring it in the Fifth Circuit. They have certain kind of judges they're going to bring it to. They bring all of these cases to a particular judge down in San Diego, these gun regulation cases. And it's so much better. We don't have they never let the ATF be the kind of agency that controls firearms like we have the FDA and the SEC, in part because the gun lobby is so strong. But these agencies that we do have existing, the FDA, the EPA, the Federal Trade Commission, the SEC, you can name many more of them. It's so easy to knock them and say they're big bureaucracies and so forth. But, thank goodness that we have them. So you don't have every stock isn't a swindle. Every drug isn't dangerous, right? Everything with the environment, the polluters are always winning, or they're just overwhelming any opponent of environmental regulation. Thank goodness we have those agencies. I'll be the first to stand up for them and say, I know that some people think we're overregulated, but we're protected by these agencies. People just really need to bear that in mind, and how important this decision is. And of course, how important your vote is for president, because the two of the justices, I think, are really not I think they might actually cut back Chevron deference. But I think Chief Justice Roberts, and from her questioning today, Amy Coney Barrett, will, at the worst, mend it. They won't end Chevron deference, and it's good to have that deference, I think, to the agencies. That's my policy view.
I mean, I think it's indisputably the case. So I'd love to hear you say it. I mean, as we've noted on this show and all along the way, these agencies, many of which you've mentioned, are already victims of a regulatory capture that we've seen play out with Boeing. Just as we've begun to X-ray and scrutinize Boeing a little bit more, you see that the FAA has really kind of let them run amok. Same thing you could say is happening on the FDA side. I think you can argue that with the Pfizers of the world, this kind of thing. I think you can argue it back and forth. I know some people at the FDA who would push back on that. But all of that said, these are agencies with a highly skilled expertise involved with the various people who are in most of the positions there. And so I agree with you. I think this is a titanic decision coming and series of decisions along these along this route to getting rid of big government and over-regulation or however they term it. I want to ask you, now I want to visit Trump with you, and then I want you to help solve an argument that Kim and I are actually having. It's it involves a very serious case, but I'm sure everyone's going to have an opinion on it. Donald Trump is, he's again on this E. Jean Carroll case because he talks smack about her, he defames her, and now he's in court having defamed her again, and the question is going to be, I guess, how much he is going to pay. You can set me straight on this, but he's been a really rude and uncooperative participant in this judge's courtroom. Today, he was apparently producing enough looks and, sort of physical movements and verbal reactions to the testimony as it came in from E. Jean Carroll that the judge threatened to remove Trump from the federal courtroom. This is according to multiple people who were there in the courtroom, loudly saying things. He said, he called the judge a nasty guy, used terms like con job and a witch hunt. And the judge essentially said, hey, this is a quote, Mr. Trump, I hope I don't have to consider excluding you from the trial. I understand you are probably very eager for me to do that. And Trump said, I would love it. And then he said, I know you would. That was the judge who said that. You just can't control yourself in this circumstance, apparently. And Trump said, you can't either. The reality is Trump can't control himself and the court can't control Trump. Isn't that the reality?
Well, I know people need a scorecard, but, Trump is facing 2 federal criminal trials. It looks like one may still be on track to go in March, the D.C. one involving the insurrection and so forth. The one in Mar-a-Lago, the other federal trial, looks like there's no way it's going to go to trial before the November election. There's also 2 there's 2 state criminal cases. One of them is the one down in Georgia where a lot's happening. In addition to those 4, and there's the New York case by the DA, which is a criminal case. That's the one that involves Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels and covering up, paying hush money to her. With all those 4 going, there's also a civil trial that has been covered quite a bit. That's the one over the fact that he overstated his assets when it came to trying to get bank loans, and he understated the same assets when it came to paying taxes. That's the one that just went to closing argument. In addition to those 5 cases, there's E. Jean Carroll against Trump. That case has gone to trial already. She won, he lost, okay? Another one of Trump the loser in court. And then after Trump the loser lost in court, then he defamed her again. So now that's going to go to trial. But in the interim of that, while he was president, okay, he also said she was a liar, she's not my type. He said all this derogatory stuff while he was president. That case kicked around Mark to find out whether he had any immunity for that while he was president. As we saw in the Bill Clinton case with him being sued, it turned out he had no immunity from civil suits. So guess what? This is how much damages there is, because he lost the first trial with E. Jean Carroll, and she showed that he had sexually assaulted her when he said that she was a liar about sexually assaulting her. By the same token that the jury found that he had sexually assaulted her, he defamed her when he said that she was lying because he had indeed sexually assaulted her. So that issue in this second trial with E. Jean Carroll has been decided. This is another one which is all about damages. This is how much money he has to pay. And he's decided that it will help him not have to pay that much to come to court which he has a right to do because it's a court case and you have a right to attend your own trial, civil or criminal. But what you can't do is do exactly what he's doing, Mark. You cannot make faces at the jury. You can't say these things sotto voce, which you really are stage whispers that you want the jury to hear. That is utterly, totally improper. And all of us trial lawyers, we admonish our clients, don't do that. Don't make faces. Don't say things in stage whispers. And Trump is violating the advice that no doubt he got from his lawyers because he actually wants to, in this case, be thrown out of the courtroom because all of his base will know about it. They'll never follow it in the New York Times or on your show or in their local newspaper if it's covered, okay, or radio, TV. They'll only follow the fact that Trump will say, you see, the deep state judge threw me out of the courtroom. I can't get a fair trial. Look how I'm getting thrown out. So Judge Kaplan is smart. He knows that. And Kaplan is trying to figure out. So yes, he has a duty to maintain the decorum of the courtroom, but also he's smart enough not to play into Trump's hands. And obviously he's thinking about how does he maintain decorum? How does he show people that there is a rule of law, that no one is above the law, that you cannot act really with contempt toward the court like Trump is doing, but he's trying to figure out. So what he's done now is I think he's warned him. And I think by now with the record that he's made, if he keeps doing that, he'll, in his stentorian voice, which will not be covered live or the camera, because there's no camera in the federal courtroom, but he will say, here's the record. You did this, you did that. That was improper. I warned you. Okay, you cannot act, with contempt toward this court. No one in America can. You're not above the law. He'll give a great speech, which will be on the front of the New York Times if he goes back. And Trump just may say, you know what? I did what I did. The jury gets the fact that I'm very unhappy, and Trump may not even come back again. He's always playing what he thinks is going to work out best with his base for how he's going to play this supposed victimization. No one's victimizing him. He all he had to do. He didn't have to defame.
He didn't even have to show up. Actually, he doesn't have to be in the courtroom.
Right now, he's paying the price, and he may not even show up for the next day. And I think the jury will come back with a big damages award. Mark, don't you?
Yeah, that's really what's being talked about. And it's just so funny that I think you stated so well that the judge has to strike the balance of sort of allowing this kid to disrupt the class, if you will, enough to not let him grandstand and cut him out at the first peep. But if he keeps, chirping along as he is, and if he keeps violating the rules of the court, then you toss him. But it's a really tough balance that judge has to strike. So, not the easiest spot. Now I want to ask you about a case that will be coming. A teen arrested after leading a group assault on a student in Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa is about an hour north of San Francisco. This is in a high school. And Kim and I were actually speaking about this. So, Kim, maybe you want to come in and you can share maybe a couple of the facts if you're able to. It was a group assault on a 14-year-old girl in a restroom.
High school bathroom, Montgomery High School. One of the girls arrested is 14 years old. And allegedly, she had pushed this girl to the floor of the bathroom, ripped out chunks of her hair, and then punched her in the face 30 times or more. The 14-year-old girl that was allegedly involved in this has been arrested at her home in Santa Rosa. And right away when I was telling Mark about this case, because I have a 14-year-old daughter, and it's shocking to me that this could happen in a girl's bathroom in the county where I live. And he said that type of violent assault, the girl needs to be charged as an adult. And I said, but what about her, her brain? They're still mushy. They're not fully baked yet until what? They're 25. So you're going to take a 14-year-old girl and treat her like an adult and throw it away.
I said it as a society, it's baked enough apparently for her to perpetrate that kind of violence. So, but you're the jurist here. Tell us the truth here as to the way you see it.
Well, I think most people believe in a juvenile system of justice, that you don't generally treat people who are 14 as adults because their brains are developing. you're so foremost in your mind is to rehabilitate them and to have them have a different life and not be in the criminal justice system and not have a record for the rest of their life. Then you have some egregious cases. You know, you have people who are 17. We had one down here. It's one of the issues they're going to try to use against our district attorney, Gascon. There was someone who was 17 and like 10 months. It was a really grisly murder. And he treated the person as a juvenile because I think he'd run on that he believed in the juvenile justice system and he wasn't going to treat people under 18. He wasn't going to, put them over in adult court, which is something that the DA has a lot of discretion about. And he ran on, he was not going to exercise his discretion. And a lot of people said, you know what, that's different. You exercise your discretion. That 17-year-old person who was a month short of 18, you should have treated him as an adult. And, for one summer, I was a Brooklyn district attorney for the summer. That was my summer intern job. And at that time in Brooklyn, we had hitmen. We had 15 and 16-year-old hitmen because the cartels, the gangsters would give that assignment of hitting somebody to a 16-year-old because they knew the worst that was going to happen was they'd go to juvenile court and they'd be out of the juvenile justice system, even if caught. And of course, there was huge pressure to not treat them as juveniles. I mean, with that narrative. So I guess my feeling about this is it's terrible. And hopefully nothing like that will ever happen to your daughter or anybody else's, or anybody else's relative. But at the same time, from what I'm hearing about that, I don't know if I were the district attorney in your area, 14, I'd probably have her go to juvenile court. I probably wouldn't treat her as an adult. If that girl had died or suffered like scarring for the rest of her life and I had discretion, I might think differently about it. And then, of course, you get pressure from the parents. In Gascon's case down here in LA, there was a lot of pressure from the family. They went to the media. I'm sure that when the election goes with Gascon, we're going to hear from that family. We're going to hear about that case. So I hope I answered it somewhat.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I think that you and Kim are sort of like-minded on this. I think I've seen our society evolve in dangerous ways, and one of the dangerous ways is that violence has perpetrated this culture in many more ways and many more age groups than I would like to accept. And I think I'm with you. It's like, oh my God, it's a 14-year-old, and a 14-year-old can change. And I'm not saying a 14-year-old can't change, but I think that maybe it's not full adult court, but I think juvenile court isn't sufficient for a crime of violence. When you talk about a crime of violence that passes a certain threshold, and again, this is my opinion. You're such a legal scholar. I really yield to what your thoughts are, but I still think you can maybe rehabilitate this person. But I do believe that there is a level of violence baked into the DNA. It's not literally the DNA. I mean, I think it's through a lot of things that happened in that child's upbringing that lead them to this. So my heart breaks for the perpetrator, but my heart breaks more for the victim. I guess that's where I am on it.
Mark, there are juvenile detention centers. So it's not like this 14-year-old, because she's in the juvenile system, is going to go home. She may be in a juvenile detention center for a long time. I had a client that I was able to help. He was about 17 years old, and I called him the Einstein of the barrio. He was like this fantastic kid. He's in the service now. He's doing a great job, serving his country. I got him out of this problem that he was in, but he had to spend, before I got him out of the problem that he was in, he had to spend a couple of months in a detention center. Which we did in the summer because he didn't want to mess with his 4.0 grade point average. He really was a brilliant kid, in my opinion, wrongly accused. Like I said, I got him out of the trouble that he was in, and he's doing in the Army now, doing a great job. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is detention, and there were some people in there that, from my client's account of it, they were getting rehabilitated, but they were pretty scary when you heard of the stuff that they'd done, but they weren't home. They were in a detention center. So in terms of protecting society from people who are very young, but are very vicious and very prone to recidivism, there are juvenile detention centers, and people are not home and out in the neighborhood.
As a follow-up, David, what happened to the 15 and 16-year-olds in that Brooklyn case that you were talking about? That several, I mean, not one singular case, but in the case of those Brooklyn kids.
Well, I was only there for the summer, but at the time, at least under the law then, there was discretion to treat them as an adult. The judge had to concur that that was a proper thing to do. But if you get treated as an adult, I mean, you can get a life sentence. And then, there's some reforms of that. There's a lot of people who come along and say, wait a second, if you were 16 when you committed the crime, even though you got an adult sentence and you got life, you ought to be eligible for parole. They ought to, if you really are rehabilitated. And then a lot of people think, there's all these different opinions about parole. Some people think everybody gets parole if you do something awful, awful, awful. You remember the Manson family people. And no matter how much they showed they were rehabilitated, it was like, you're one of the Manson family members. You shouldn't get, right? You should never be out on the street again. So there's some view of that. And then there's another view that, the parole system is too unyielding and that they ought to give the person a break. And even if he was a 16-year-old hitman, now he's taken courses, he's rehabilitated, he's a totally different place in life. He's 30 years old. Why not release him? And, they'll go back and forth. 30, you should be released, even if you were a 15-year-old hitman, proven to a court, right, beyond a reasonable doubt. And some people think, oh my God, you murdered 5 people for the cartel, and you're getting out at 30. So that's our criminal justice system debate. Yeah. You can have that in any bar and every salon in America, right?
Well, the chat lighting up with opinions, so we'll share some of those, but it was definitely Kim and myself going back and forth on it. I just felt it was such a brutal crime of violence, but maybe I'm reacting emotionally to that crime of violence as well. David, love spending time with you. Thank you so much. We're going to watch this SCOTUS situation, the Trump situation as well, and we'll check in with you next week.
Great to be with you guys.
Love it. David Katz, everybody. Good stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
Always a great day when David Katz is on the show. Also a great day when Belinda Waymouth gets to come on the show. It's The Planet, stupid, coming your way in merely moments. And today we'll be talking a lot about the ocean. So I always love talking about the sea. Let's do it. Albert, what do you think?
Let's do it. It's the planet. Stupid.
The planet, stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Yeah, let's talk about Greenland. Before we do it, let's bring in Belinda Waymouth, our environmental expert. Hi, Belinda. How's it going today?
It's fantastic. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us. I was reading stories about Greenland and the ice melting there.
Yeah.
Apparently it is, and I applause for you. Yes.
Yeah, not for the ice melting. You're not happy about that, right? No.
Apparently it's worse than we thought it was.
Yeah. The research that came out yesterday, it was pretty frightening because obviously we're really looking at ice. It's a big deal, glaciers and these ice sheets melting. And Greenland is a big deal. I mean, I'm sure our listeners know this hilariously. They called it Greenland because they wanted everyone to go there, not to go to Iceland. But Iceland is actually green and Greenland is covered in ice. So they got there and oopsie. But the ice there is melting. More than they thought, at 20% more, which is a huge amount to have, that much ice melting, going into the ocean. And the big thing about the ice sheets is the ice sheets act like plugs. They hold the ice on the land. It's sort of like a plug in a bottle or in a bath. And once those ice sheets melt, then the glaciers that are on land that have been held there by the ice sheets that are sitting in the ocean then can carve off and come rushing down into the ocean. And yes, here's an amazing photo of, and you can see the ice is being melted from below by warmer sea temperatures. And the big thing about ice melting is ice is fresh water. It's not salt water. So it really changes the salinity of the ocean. And that is super, super important. we've talked about it before on the show. The ocean has all these incredible circulation systems that happen, and they connect all the world's oceans, making it very global. They move temperature, salt, nutrients around, and they keep, they're sort of like it's like the Goldilocks effect for us on the planet. They keep it nice and livable, where the average temperature is 61 degrees Fahrenheit. So I sent over a link for the thermohaline circulation model. Maybe if you can put it up, Albert, because this sort of really explains it well. And what it is basically, it's called the ocean conveyor belt. And it starts with warm water going northward up to the Arctic. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, there it is. So the blue obviously is the cold water and the red color is the warm. And if you just think about it sort of simply, what it does is, if it was just one big conveyor belt, it's warm, salty water going up to the Arctic, releasing its heat up into the atmosphere. And so making, the countries in Western Europe, giving them a nice, temperate, climate. And then that salty, cooler water drops to the benthic, the deep, deep ocean, and then starts this journey that takes hundreds of years, and it goes all the way south to Antarctica. It picks up nutrients on the way, because all the nutrients in the ocean and the incredible carbon sink that our ocean is, all marine life, as it decomposes, all that carbon falls down and settles on the ocean floor. So the water, it's kind of complicated, and if I'm not making sense, please come interrupt me and ask me a question, because I want this to be okay. So far, so good.
Mm-hmm, I think so. I'm with you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So then this really nutrient-rich and very cold water gets to the Antarctic, and then it upwells, as you can see down the bottom, and the warm water starts its path back northward. Now, it's not just a complete, sort of neat one conveyor belt. You can see there's upwelling that happens in the North Pacific and in different parts of the ocean, and this really mixes the salty and the heat and sort of moves it around the planet. And the water that upwells in the Northern Pacific, that takes thousands, that takes 1,000 years to make its full complete trip, around the globe. Mm-hmm. The amazing thing is, I'm just going to add in a few little details. So scientists initially thought that the ocean only had currents on the top where the wind was, and that in the benthic, the deep, deep ocean, that water just stayed there. But of course it doesn't. We've got this incredible thermohaline circulation model that's happening, the conveyor belt. And at the surface, water can move a meter a second, say when it's in the Gulf Stream, which is fast moving on the surface of the ocean. Down at the deep, deep depths of the ocean, it moves, sort of fractions of a centimeter a second. It's going very slowly, hence the, hundreds of years, or the, 1,000 for the, some parts of the water. Now, what the concern is in the northern hemisphere is the AMOC, which is the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation part of it. And what that does is it takes lovely warm tropical water up our northeast coast here in the US, mm-hmm. and then up to the Arctic, bringing the warm temperature that makes Western Europe so lovely and livable. It also really helps out the British Isles. But the thing about that water is, if you add all this fresh water in from Greenland that doesn't have the salt in it, it might not have the density to then do its downwelling in the Arctic and keep moving then down to Antarctica and moving these things around. And if you broke down the AMOC in the Northern Hemisphere, you would bring way, way colder temperatures to Europe, and you would also bring less precipitation. So their ability to grow crops to feed themselves would be really inhibited. And what scientists have been doing is, trying to predict when, this system could break down. And we saw it in that movie, The Day After Tomorrow, and it was,
mm-hmm.
Hellacious. And
that was chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That was like floods coming down major streets in New York, and
and ice, you woke up the next morning and you lived in an iceberg. So So the thing is, what this research, the reason why it's really good is it's the interplay of, the atmosphere, ocean currents, and these ice sheets. And what's been happening is they've sort of been looking at these things more individually. And now it's really like, we have to look at ice sheets because they're so important, because they're holding the glaciers, on land. And they are being melted from below with warmer ocean temperatures. They're being melted from above with warmer atmospheric temperatures. And, you can make all these predictions, but it's really hard to know with these, really big circulation models, and then what will happen in the atmosphere as it warms up, and with, as we change its chemistry by putting more, carbon dioxide and methane in there, and what will happen to the ocean, and what will the interplay be? Will it, some scientists have said the AMOC could be disrupted. We could be very close to the tipping point and it could stop working by 2100. Other scientists say it could be as early as 2050. And we're just in that we don't know, and we really should be taking steps to mitigate our emissions because it is a big unknown.
Isn't it too late to stop the melting of the glaciers? I mean, if you look at what's happening, it seems like that's in motion. I don't know what we can do to make that stop.
Well, the thing is, it is in motion. Climate change is in motion. We're living with it. We're living with, more floods, more fires, more forest fires, wetter, stormier storms, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, everything is, all of those systems are being exacerbated. We just have to start doing the right thing. And we know it. And I did want to, talk a little bit.
So pretty. Look at that.
I know that's the thing, is it's very beautiful because that fresh water has that gorgeous bluey color to it.
Yeah.
As it melts, it is quite beautiful. I sent another link that had these pictures that they took just this week. It was down in Antarctica, and the colors are beautiful, and it's. The thing is, we are making the transition. We absolutely are, to renewable energy. And it's really that we have to keep the pressure on, our governments. You have to vote for politicians who believe in climate change and who believe, in the adaptive strategies that we need to be taking. And just to, I'm always telling people about, how renewable energy, is on the uptick here. And, the rate that it's going to increase this year, I mean, we're going to have 75% more solar installed by, 2025. We're going to, than we have been at, current rates. I mean, the adaptation is huge. It's going to surpass natural gas by 2030 as far as generation goes. It already surpassed nuclear in 2021 and coal in 2022. So it's just really vital that we keep doing this. And also we do the things we need to do to protect the oceans. I was reading a story today about sharks, and sharks are an apex predator. They have been in the ocean for 400 million years.
What? Fossils. Look at the fossils. I mean, they're very old. Yes.
Yeah, they are. So they're at the sort of the peak of their evolutionary, sort of performance, which you can see, they're super impressive, but then we kill them because we want shark fin soup. And so what research has just shown is banning finning as a process has not worked, because all that means is the fishers bring the sharks ashore and don't just take the fins, they sell all the shark meat. So they can get around that law. But when you do an outright ban of fishing for sharks, the decimation goes down by 40%. And when you have marine protected areas, we're talking about this 30 by 30. By the year 2030, we need to be protecting 30% of the ocean and 30% of the land. And I just think it's vital in the ocean because, we need these guys, We need sharks. They're a really important part of the ecosystem down there. We need to lower emissions so that the thermohaline, cycle keeps going in the ocean. I mean, these things are a no-brainer.
So you talked about people not being able to grow food and the environment changing. If our cycle, if the ocean cycle of the currents does go kaput, what are the other consequences we face?
Well, this is the thing that's really hard to predict because there are so many different circulation, models that are, a part of it. I mean, we're already seeing, what's happened with the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream is supposed to go around in a very sort of neat circle at 60 degrees north latitude around, up in the Arctic Circle. And because of how much greenhouse gases we've put into the atmosphere, it now wiggles like this, and it's got this wavy line. And so we have these incredible cold snaps that come down as far south as Texas. Remember a few years ago when Texas was freezing and they had those terrible power outages? I think over 200 people died. So I think, I mean, I hate to say this, but I mean, we're playing with fire, and we need to stop doing that because to be able to predict and map out this is exactly what's going to happen, that's very hard to do because, like I say, there are so many things that are going to affect each other, and there could be domino effects in certain areas. But I think what happens in the ocean and how important is the ocean is as far as regulating, life on Earth and keeping it livable. We don't want to be messing with that baby.
Well, we are messing with it in Norway because Norway just votes yes on this deep sea mining thing that we have people in this area who've been protesting against this, who've been warning against this. And now, despite all these environmental concerns, Norway says, go ahead, do what you got to do. Then the deep sea.
It's absolutely crazy. So Norway, it was an 80-20 vote in their parliament that they say, yes, we're going to deep sea mine. And you know what? Research by environmental scientists say, we don't need they're going to get lithium, cobalt, and scandium, it's called, are the precious earth metals that they're going down there to get. We don't need the ones that are in the deep sea. We need to get the ones that are easier to get at and aren't going to mess with oceanic ecosystems. And Norway, this is the thing that's crazy. Norway positions itself as being some kind of, ocean protector and hero, and it really isn't. I mean, the other thing they just did, and there are 3 countries that have just allowed new licenses to put, basically mining and trash into the fjords or into their waterways, let it be marine waste. So it's Norway, Turkey, and Papua New Guinea who've just given these new licenses. So for Norway to ever try to position themselves as or itself, it's one country, as an ocean champion is insane. And I remember years ago, so we have a big thing happening in the Southern Ocean that's around Antarctica, because I'm a New Zealander, I care about the Southern Ocean. And it was this very pristine sort of area for so long, but not anymore. We've got Korea, Japan, China, Norway, and I think it's Taiwan, and they're all down there sucking the krill out of the ocean. And the krill, a little 5-centimeter long shrimp, and there are they say trillions of them. By biomass, they're huge. Now
the whales eat them, right?
Whales, seals, penguins, marine bird life. But we want them because we use them in salmon farms. We use them for our omega, fish oil tablets. But I remember reading about Norway and how they had these very successful boats that were down there just hoovering the krill out of the ocean. And I mean, it's just, you should be fishing in your own seas, and you should be fishing at a sustainable level. They also put krill into pet food. So I'm mad at Norway.
Well, I'm surprised at Norway. I really am.
Yeah, and that too. Yes,
and maybe it's a stereotype, but when I think about countries that don't really care much about the environment and care more about maybe manufacturing or business, I would think of countries like maybe, I don't know, Malaysia or somewhere where there's a dye, where you've seen pictures of dye being dumped into water, like where business matters more. But when you think about European countries, their environmental restrictions and their health safety restrictions have always been better than those in America by far. And so I'm surprised that Norway is kind of bucking that trend and not sticking with caring about the environment, caring about, what happens to people, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, I think they're having a real sort of rightward swing. And then there's also a thing that countries do where they've always been going into other people's territories and overfishing and taking more than they should. I mean, I suppose this was in the 80s and 90s, when you flew up the coast of New Zealand at night, the pilot would point out the lights that you could see out of the ocean. And he said, that's all the fishing boats from Japan and Taiwan and all these Asian countries that are right at our 200-mile, our economic zone, New Zealand's economic zone. And they were right at the edge of it, as far as the eye could see, fishing, hoovering everything they could out of the ocean. And the thing about, living sustainably is it's using, we were talking about plastics last week. And the thing about plastics is you absolutely should not manufacture more in the country that you live in than you can deal with at the end of their productive life. If you can't recycle them on American soil, you shouldn't be producing them on American soil, because it's not okay to send them to China or Indonesia or the Philippines and say, hey, here's our recycling mess, you take care of it. And it's the same with I get if you're a landlocked country, you're going to want to say to someone, hey, can we use your ocean, or can we, we're going to go into, international waters. But the problem is, we really, capitalism is this model that's based on perpetual growth, and perpetual growth just isn't sustainable. We've got one planet, one finite planet. We saw that when the astronauts went into space and took that photo in the 70s, looking back at our beautiful blue planet. It's one planet. There is no planet B. I know that line's been used to, ad nauseum by us environmentalists, but it's true. There isn't another one. And the rate that we're consuming, they say we need 4.5 planets. Well, we don't have 4.5 planets. We have one. So we need to get our, our consuming levels, in line with realistically what our resource levels are.
Yeah.
And I've talked about that, I don't know what it's called, the resource odometer, that shows that by, it's earlier and earlier each year that we reach, the sustainable amount of resources that the earth can, regenerate. We reach that clock by August. So then we've got, September, October, November, December, where we're in the red with our resource use. And we have to get right-sized.
I have to tell you that our recent conversations have motivated me to weed all the plastic items out of my kitchen. You should see the stack.
That's crazy, right?
So I started with cutting boards because I read this story that, thank you very much.
Yeah, I hate those plastic cutting boards.
I read this story. I had these little, they're very thin and they're very handy, but I had these little plastic cutting boards, and I read a story that every time you slice, you nanoplastic in the food and whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I know everything is still, it's still coming out of the faucet, right? It's still everywhere, and I can't get rid of it, but maybe I can limit it. So then I'm looking at cups. I've still got some plastic cups hanging around. Got to get those out of there. I find myself struggling, and I know we're running out of time, but and I don't know why I'm so married to my Tupperware. I'm having a hard time just getting rid of it all, and I don't know why.
Well, it doesn't feel sustainable chucking lots of stuff out, right? That doesn't feel good. But I know we've talked about it before, and we have kids, and so you think about their health, and you don't want your children getting those little nanoplastics that are coming off the side. It's like I was saying last week. Plastic is like skin; it's shedding all the time, and so little bits are coming off that cutting board or the Tupperware. I have the Tupperware that's the glass, and then it has it does have a plastic lid on it. I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but I make sure that none of the food touches
Touching
the
the-
plastic,
that's
particularly
right.
not when it's warm. You really, you've got to keep it, you can't have hot food coming in, and especially oil. Never, ever oil. Never, ever buy oil, guys, in plastic bottles. Super, super bad.
Does that go with mayonnaise as well? Because we're having a debate on my house about mayonnaise in plastic jars.
Yeah, I'd get it in glass, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is because you can recycle glass, you can't recycle the plastic. And then it's the lids. I know everything has a plastic lid on it. So the thing is, it's really, it's the reducing. It's the reducing the amount of plastic that we have in our lives. Reduce and reuse everything over and over and over again and recycle. I mean, look, I use a piece of aluminium. I know I'm supposed to say it the other way, aluminium.
No, we like it the way you say it. This is good.
Thank you. If you use a piece of aluminium, foil 6 times, and I know a lot of people will say to me, I'm not going to wash it, that's disgusting. But if you use it 6 times, you've zeroed out its carbon footprint, and then you recycle it. I mean, aluminium is very, very recyclable, and you want to do that, and you want to use it the 6 times because it's mined and it's a big carbon footprint to produce it. But have you also got those beeswax, those wrappers that you can use over the top of containers, and they, I think those are a good alternative, to using a plastic bag over something. And then honestly, the thing that I do, Kim, is because, I don't buy plastic bags for storing things, because so many things come in plastic. My husband loves this bread Dave's bread, and it's delicious, but it comes in a plastic bag. So I use those plastic bags when I shop. That's what I put my my apples or whatever in. Or if I go to the farmer's market, I never take their plastic. I bring, unfortunately, my own.
Yeah.
But in that way, I'm reducing it. And the other thing, so there's a guy at the farmer's market, and he sells these delicious cucumbers, and they're all in a plastic bag. Well, I say, you keep all your bags, reuse them. I'll just put them in my bag. Like, it's taking every opportunity to reduce it, but I'm not sure what your thing is with your Tupperware in your kitchen and what you love it.
I think I spent a lot of money on it, and I try to take care of it, and and then you look at it and you're like, am I just going to throw it out? I mean, it's perfectly good Tupperware. I guess I'm having a mental moment where I know I need to get rid of the plastic and purge, but I'm holding on to things that I shouldn't be holding on to.
Well, could you put it in the Goodwill box? Is it good enough for?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
let other people suck down my nanoplastics. Awesome.
Well, look, the thing is, or you can put it in the recycling bin if it's even recyclable, because that's the other thing. Like, is it the right? I mean, I don't think any Tupperware even has a number written on it, that says, yes, you can recycle the stuff, and that's very high quality.
Yeah.
And then the other thing also, they're always talking about, which bottle is the best one, and what's that crazy reusable cup that everyone's going nuts for right now?
The Stanley Cup.
Yeah, they're buying 40 of them. People, please buy 1, 2, or 3, not 40. You do not need one that color coordinates with every outfit you're wearing. That's ridiculous. So the thing about a reusable bottle is it's about how many times you use it, because obviously a glass or a stainless steel or an aluminium bottle has a higher carbon footprint than making a plastic bottle, but it's how many times you use it once you own it.
Yeah.
So it's that reusing everything as many, many times as you possibly can, and then the thinking about, where am I going to dispose of this? Is it going to go in recycling? Could someone else use it who doesn't have all the lovely containers I have in my house?
Yeah. Belinda, I've taken way too much of your time, but thank you for coming on, I've learned so much about the ocean today and about the currents and everything else. So thank you for being here. I hope to see you next Thursday. Huge love to you.
I will be here. And yes, I love talking about the ocean, because I just think those currents, they're like magic. It's like a magic trick, goes down at one, pole and then comes up at the other, and, and around it goes. It's
absolutely.
Super cool. Have a wonderful week.
And It's the Planet Stupid. Thank you, Belinda.
More.
It's the Planet Stupid.
No. It's the Planet Stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, all right. We have some people to thank. First of all, thanks to Jim Slayton. Really appreciate it. Yes. Does anybody really know what time it is? Who knows? I don't know. Spencer Jaffe throwing down a $5 super sticker today. Kelly Malloy for a $10 super sticker. So appreciated. TheMarkThompsonShow.com is where you can find us and where you can see the Patreon and the PayPal links. And you'll see all the names coming up here in just a moment. Albert, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your help today.
Thank you. And Mark will be back tomorrow. So
Mark will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we have Michael Schur talking politics. John Daly joins us for Friday Fabulous Florida. And of course, Michael Snyder will stop in to the show with all of his culture blasting skills. Be here tomorrow. Right now, be here for the After Party Live. I'm Kim McAllister in for Mark Thompson, bidding you bye-bye.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
All the time. Bye-bye.